Hello and welcome. My name is Christina and I'm the Education Coordinator with the DuPage County Farm Bureau. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. And if you've been following along all this time, welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about a really important crop to both the United States and specifically our state of Illinois, and those are soybeans. So my first question to you is, what is a soybean? You guys may have heard of soybeans before. You can see them in the picture there on the right. Well, soybeans are actually seeds of the soybean plant. And the soybean plant is a member of the legume family. So they're related to things like peanuts and peas, and they actually grow kind of similarly because they grow in pods. Now, soybeans are also considered a commodity crop, and commodity crops are crops that are traded. So soybeans are a commodity crop that's really big here in the United States, along with corn and wheat. Now, soybeans haven't always grown here in the United States. They actually originated in Southeast Asia. Around 1100 BC is when Chinese farmers actually domesticated soybeans and started growing them as a crop. And then around 1712 is when soybeans were brought to Europe and they began growing there. And then around the early 1800s is when soybeans were actually brought to the United States and we began growing them as a crop. Well, today, the United States is one of the top growers of soybeans in the entire world. The United States, Brazil, and Argentina all grow a lot of soybeans. Now, I mentioned that soybeans are really important to our state of Illinois. Well, Illinois is actually the #1 grower of soybeans in the United States. In 2019, we planted 10.3 million acres of soybeans. And if we remember, an acre is about the size of what? A football field. So 10.3 million acres, and from that we got 605 million bushels of soybeans. Now, a bushel of soybeans weighs about 60 pounds. So you can see on my map here, the counties that grow the most soybeans. So the darker counties grow more than the lighter counties, but pretty much soybeans grow throughout our whole state. Now, if you joined us for our corn lesson, you may remember what crop rotation means. Soybeans play an important part in crop rotation, especially in Illinois, where we grow a lot of corn and soybeans. A lot of times farmers will plant corn one year and then soybeans the next, and then corn and then soybeans, and rotate them year after year or every couple of years. And the reason that they do this is to help preserve our soil health. Corn takes nitrogen out of the soil as it grows, and soybeans actually help put nitrogen back into the soil as they grow. So it's a good natural way to help keep our soil really fertile and full of nutrients, and specifically nitrogen. Now, to understand what we use soybeans for, we first need to take a look at all the parts of the soybean plant. So let's start with the actual soybean seed itself. So each soybean has a seed coat that covers it on the outside, and this seed coat's job is to actually protect the seed. And then there's a darker brown spot on it. This is called the hilum. The hilum's job is to allow water into the seed coat so that the seed can begin germinating and growing. Inside the seed, we have the cotyledon, which is the first food source for the soybean plant, and it will actually grow and become the first pair of leaves. And then the last part that's inside the seed is the embryo. And the embryo is the part that actually develops into the new plant that starts as the stem and leaves and roots. So that's all within the soybean seed itself. And then we have the actual soybean plant. Now, the soybean leaves, they grow in groups of 3. So they're called trifoliates. So I want you guys to all say that with me right now. Trifoliate. So that means it's in groups of 3. Are there any other words that you can think of to help you remember that? Maybe something else that comes in groups of 3? So maybe like a triangle or a tricycle. Triangles have 3 sides, tricycles have 3 wheels, and trifoliates have 3 leaves. And then the plant also has a taproot, which is the main root that goes down. And then it has smaller lateral roots that branch out. And those are what suck up and absorb the water and nutrients from the soil and help the plant to grow. So those are the parts of our soybean plant. So let's talk about the process of planting all the way to harvest for soybeans. Soybeans here in Illinois are planted in the springtime using a tractor and a planter. A lot of times farmers will have GPS or auto steer in their tractors to help them plant perfectly straight rows and prevent double planting and things like that. So this usually happens in the springtime. And then the soybeans will actually start to grow. Between 4 and 7 days after they're planted, they will start to germinate and grow. And first, what will happen is they will put out a little tail-like root called a radicle, and then more roots will start to grow. Eventually, the plant will pop up through the ground, and it's going to start putting out its leaves, its trifoliate leaves, as it gets a little bigger. Now, soybeans will also put out flowers as it grows. And I think we all know what the purpose of the flower is, right? We've talked a lot about this in most of our presentations. So the flowers are really important for pollination. Now, soybeans are self-pollinating, so they don't require insects to help pollinate their flowers. They do this themselves. So during the summer, the soybeans are growing. They're putting out their pods that have their seeds or beans inside. Now, has anyone ever heard of the word edamame? You may have eaten it before. You may like it. Give me a thumbs up if you've ever eaten or heard of edamame. So edamame is actually immature soybeans, soybeans that are harvested before they are all dried out. So you can see kind of on the picture on the left here, these are some soybeans that are growing in the summer, and each pod usually has 3 to 4 beans inside. So as it's maturing, the farmers are also caring for their plants, doing weed control and pest control, and just making sure that their plants are healthy as they're growing. So this is what's happening during the summer months. Then if you look at the picture on the right, this is of a soybean plant that's ready for harvest. So you can see that the plant has lost all of its leaves. It's really just the stalk with the pods. And those beans are going to be all dried out and they get really hard. And if you actually shook them, you could hear them rattling around inside. So soybeans are ready to be harvested in the fall time, usually between September and November, depending on where you are in the state. So then we are ready for harvest. Does anyone remember what this machine was called? We've talked about it a couple of times. Go ahead and say that out loud if you know what this is called. So this machine is a combine. Now, we saw the combine when it was harvesting corn earlier, and you can see that it looks a little bit different. So the front part here, remember, is called the head, and it looks different from the corn head that was on there. So this part is detachable, and this is the part that's cutting the stalks of the beans. Now the combine's function is still the same. It's going to be separating the soybeans from the rest of the plant. So all of the stalks and pods are going to be shot out the back of the combine as it's going through the field. So I actually filmed some soybean harvest last fall while I was at my family's farm. So let's take a look and see how the combine works. right, so once those beans have been harvested, in the video, we loaded them into a wagon and we took them to a bin to be stored. So most times soybeans will be stored in grain bins, or they can be taken to the elevator for storage. Now, it's really important that these beans stay dry, just like how the corn needed to stay dry. The soybeans also need to stay dry so that they don't get moldy and go bad. So the bins have big fans on them that help keep the air circulating and keep those soybeans nice and dry as they're sitting in storage. And then the final step for our soybeans is they are going to be exported. We export about 60% of our soybeans here in Illinois, and we will use things like trucks and trains and especially barges to move our soybeans from place to place. And so once they're exported, they're going to be made into a whole bunch of different things that we can use. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Now, soybeans are considered a renewable resource. And I know we've talked a lot about renewable resources in our time together if you've been following along. So if you have not been following along and this is your first time, I want you to pause the video right now and talk with your class and answer the questions, what is a renewable resource? And what are some other examples of renewable resources? So go ahead and pause right now if you want to discuss those questions with your class. All right, so a renewable resource is an unlimited resource or something that can be replenished within a certain amount of time for us to be able to use. So some other examples you may have thought of may have been things like trees or other crops, maybe corn, different animals or water or air. All of those things are renewable resources and they're really important for us as we live and use them in our daily lives. So what do we use all these soybeans for? We know that we grow a lot of them. Well, soybeans are mostly used for animal feed, food and industrial products, and then biodiesel. So animal feed is a major use of soybeans. Pigs are the biggest eater of soybeans. About 85% of the animal feed that's made with soybeans is used for pigs, but cattle and poultry will also eat soybeans. It's also used in food and industrial products, things like vegetable oil or paint or things like that, and biodiesel. Now, if we think back to our corn lesson, we talked about ethanol and how the corn is broken down and made into ethanol and added to the gasoline to reduce emissions. Biodiesel is very similar in that it uses soybean oil that gets broken down and mixed in with the diesel fuel, and it also helps reduce emissions. Usually it's between 5 and 20% biodiesel in the diesel, which is just another type of fuel. A lot of big trucks use diesel fuel. So I have kind of a game for us. I want you guys to read these terms and decide which of these are made with soybeans and which of them are not. I already gave away 2 of them for you, so you should get at least 2 right. So I want you to go ahead, pause this video. You can discuss this with your class and try to figure out which of these contain soybeans and which of them do not. All right, so I was a little tricky here. There's actually only one thing on this entire page that does not contain soybeans, and that is silverware. All of the other items on this list are made with soybeans. Now, soybeans, when they're broken down to be made into other things, they're first made into soybean meal and soybean oil. To make the meal, the seed coat of the bean is removed, and then it's crushed and rolled flat. And this is used in things like the animal feed and some of our food products. And then the soybean oil is used for thousands of different things. Some of the things on the list that had soybean oil were vegetable oil, mayonnaise, paint, ink, crayons, all of those things were made with soybean oil. So soybean oil has a lot of different uses. Now, I thought this would be kind of a fun video to end us on. We talked about dairy a couple of lessons ago and how milk gets from the farm to the table. Well, some people can't drink milk because they're allergic to lactose, and soy milk is maybe a good alternative. So I have this fun video to show you how soy milk is made. And soy milk is a little deceptive. It's not really milk because we know that only mammals can actually make milk. So this is like a soy beverage that's kind of like a milk replacer. So we're going to take a look at this video and see how soy milk is made.
Soy beverages originated in China centuries ago, long before lactose intolerance and dairy allergies. Recently, this dairy-free drink has become a popular alternative to milk, allowing people to order a latte but hold the lactose. It's not milk, but it's a good substitute. A soy beverage is made from liquefied soybeans. It has the look and consistency of animal milk, but is an entirely different product. It starts with a specific kind of soybean, one that has just the right amount of protein and carbohydrates. They harvest these soybeans when the plants are dry. Less moisture means the beans will be less prone to spoiling. They dehull the soybeans and crack them into small bits. A lift carries the heavy bag of bean bits to a scale to weigh them for processing. The operator cuts open the bottom of the bag, releasing the cracked soybeans into a hopper. Here, augers move the cracked beans up to 2 large grinders. The system pipes in hot water, and the grinders whip the beans and water into a creamy soy beverage concentrate. The beverage travels through steam-heated pipes. This kills off any bacteria that may have come from the field. Then it's into a vacuum chamber for a cool down. Most of the manufacturing equipment is sealed from the air to prevent contamination. The soy beverage concentrate leaves the vacuum chamber and enters a centrifuge. It spins out much of the chunky insoluble fiber, leaving smoother, thinner liquid. The soybean fiber won't be wasted. It will be used in food products and animal feed. The soy liquid flows into a big blender. They pipe in filtered water. Add refined sugar, vanilla extract, as well as various vitamins and minerals. He closes the lid while the blender mixes the ingredients into a frothy soy beverage. The soy beverage exits the blender and flows into a huge storage tank, where an agitator keeps the various ingredients well mixed. The tank is refrigerated to preserve the beverage while it's held for testing. The operator takes a sample to test the consistency and nutritional value of the beverage. With his approval, the beverage is released from the tanks. It flows through pipes injected with very hot steam. This kills off any microorganisms that may remain. After a quick cooling, the soy beverage goes into a homogenizer. It pushes the beverage through small holes to break down the fat, reducing the size of the particles. The soy beverage accumulates in a sterile tank until it's ready to be packaged. The soy beverages are packaged without any exposure to contaminants in the environment. The packaging material is made of a polyethylene laminate. Machinery takes the laminate up to a steel ring that forms it into a tubular shape. Hot jaws seal the sides and bottom, then inject the soy beverage and seal the top. The cartons land on the conveyor on their side. They're liquid tight so nothing spills. Then, a conveyor transfers them to a revolving wheel that turns them right side up. Now that they are oriented correctly, they ride a winding conveyor to a capping station. Plastic caps land on spouts that have been molded into the packages. A system of rubber belts screw the caps onto the spouts. This packaging can preserve a soy beverage for up to a year. It probably won't be on the shelf for that long because someone is always looking for a dietary alternative.
All right, and that is how we get soy milk. So pretty interesting. You probably heard some of the same words that we talked about when we had our dairy lesson, like homogenize, and remember heating it up to kill bacteria is pasteurizing. So some of the same things happen to soy milk. So pretty cool. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something new about soybeans, and I will see you next time. Bye.